Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has been the newsmaker of the day, at least for us. Right from this afternoon, it began when the Finance Minister unveiled a package intended to make people spend. Well, she started by focusing on government employees with an interesting cash voucher scheme where government employees who cannot really avail of their leave travel allowance benefits because they had nowhere to travel during the pandemic can utilize it cash free. They'll actually get the cash back if they spend 3 times the amount on a product which attracts more than 12% GST through a digital medium before 31st March 2020. Now, if you found that confusing, let's listen in to what the Finance Minister said.
So the consumer spending related proposal has 2 components to it. One is the LTC cash voucher scheme, and the other component within that consumer spending relates to special festival advance scheme. In the scheme that we are coming up with now, all this remains the same. Where the taxation was levied on 10 days of their leave concession, that will still be levied. But on the airfare travel, it will not be levied. But can they travel now? They can't because of COVID. Many of them don't want to. So instead what we are offering is, they could have that money is given to them, for which we have had about 3 kinds of slabs created. And based on that 3 slabs, which is as per the government rules and procedures, they could spend that money in buying something of their choice. So the amount which is given to them as per their government rules, their rank, their position, their whatever, is now brought to 3 different slabs. And they are flat rate slabs, which is equivalent to the travel ticket, the round ticket that they would get. And that, which will continue to be tax-free, will have to be spent on items which have 12% or more GST tax levied on them. And even more, you will spend them only in a digital mode, no cash transactions. And you will spend them only on GST registered places which sell such goods or
All right, Sachidanand Shukla, Chief Economist of Mahindra & Mahindra Group, and Ritesh Ghosal, CMO of Croma, joining me for more on this. Welcome to both of you. Ritesh, let me start by getting your take. Do you think this will actually push a significant amount of people to come out and spend on items like consumer durables?
See, I think it's the time of year where consumer durable shopping typically enjoys a big season. So the timing is fantastic. Also, this is a year when people have realized the importance of making their homes more comfortable. So anything which goes into the home, whether it is consumer durables like home appliances, anything that makes the home more comfortable, or things like laptops which make people able to work from home or learn from home. We are already seeing huge demand for these categories, and I think coming at a time when the festive sales are about to start, it should it's not just putting money in the right hand, but it's also giving them a pointer in terms of where to spend it.
Okay, Mr. Shukla, I recall that on this show on 12th August, you first spoke about the option of a cash voucher to, really help people go out and spend. We have something on those lines which has been announced today. How do you look at it?
Well, I think this is indeed a positive. Let me just give you the backdrop. Why I spoke about it, or why have people been advocating about the need for a consumption voucher? It's very, very clear that people are really into precautionary savings. there is an environment of fear. People are not really either willing or able to go out and consume the way they used to because of COVID. And the other thing that we've seen globally, wherever there has been a stimulus rolled out, people have tended to save more rather than spend. So there is this paradox of thrift that people talk about, economists talk about. And there was a worry that if you dole out a lot more cash or give people more money, they would just save it for the future because of this environment of fear. And therefore, we spoke about the need for a consumption voucher, which is time bound. So, I mean, if I look at how what the government has done, the intent is very clear and positive, and it essentially focuses on the near term. So, if you look at what they've done, either on the consumption or the capex side, they have said it stops at end March 31st, right? So this is time bound. So full marks for trying and the intent. But there are two things which are also equally important. One, I think, is the design part, where I see a lot of scope to improve upon this, because the design leaves a lot to be desired. And the other part, I mean, you can talk about it for any government scheme, is the implementation. And it is very clear that fiscal policy cannot compensate for private sector demand loss this year. So the government has come in.
It is extremely cumbersome. No, Mr. Shukla, you're mincing your words. Mr. Shukla, you're mincing your words because it's extremely cumbersome. You have to use 3 times of the amount you're supposed to get on a digital platform on an item more than 12% GST by 31st March. And according to one report I was reading, this is going to impact about 35 lakh people who may or may not want to spend.
Right. Which is why I said the design is a problem, leaves a lot to be desired. I think the total size of the package also is not very large. But what they're trying to do is trying to cleverly target it to boost festive sales, right? And it's also important that you design vouchers which are use it or lose it, right? And they're also trying to encourage expenditure switch into services as well as goods, which could be consumer durables or from travel to consumer goods, etc. Now, you're very right. The policy, when you read it, for a typical person, if you're trying to use this policy, it is very, very difficult in terms of the design. What I would have wanted is to come out with a very simple consumption voucher wherein you get, say, 25 or 30% if you're spending, say, an amount, say, 10,000 rupees, and you get, say, 30 or 40% as a discount or as a consumption voucher. Now, these sort of vouchers have been designed and implemented by China, Taiwan, Japan, multiple other economies. I think the way it has been done by linking it to LTA, by linking it to these fare slabs, and also now we have to wait for the details, what kind of services. Now, the perverse argument could be that people try to hoard some of these vouchers. For example, if they say services, can I then accumulate some of these and claim it by March? What happens to preponement of consumption savings? So I think the implementation as well as the design is problematic. What I would want to see essentially is the government to come and simplify this. Only then will it boost consumption demand. And we all know that consumption multiplier is very, very weak. It is less than 1%, in terms of less than unity. Capex multiplier, as we know, is much higher at say 3 or for the central government and 2x for the states. So what I would urge the government or the people involved is just simplify this mechanism, because otherwise there are too many ifs and buts, and my fear is it might slip through and not really give the desired result in terms of preponing consumption expenditure, which we thought it would.
You know, Ritesh, I want to get a sense from you on what the demand has already been like, because all the other consumption indicators we see, especially for items like smartphones or consumer durables or, you know, the over 12% GST bracket, seem to be already selling pretty well. Is that a correct estimate? Do you really need a push in this direction?
See, Yes, since August, sales have been good, in excess of 20% actually. But as an industry, like any other industry, the quarter 1 was a washout. Quarter 1 is, ACs and refrigerators, summer season was a complete washout. And therefore, to that extent, year on year, if you see, not just us as retailers, but pretty much all the key consumer durable companies, whether it's an LG, Samsung, you name them, Whirlpool, Haier, everybody is in the red because you've lost a very big quarter. And therefore, YTD numbers are still negative. That's one part of it. Second part of it is it's very well to say, we need to make it simpler, etc. Uh, my take on this is, see, whenever in this country, starting with the 1985 pay commission, whenever the government employee as a base has been stimulated, it has created a cascading effect through the economy. Uh, and I'm pretty hopeful of the same thing happening. Second thing is, while it may sound complex at a aggregate scheme level, for an individual government employee, and I'm speaking as the son of a government employee, you know your LTS lab, you know what your fares are, you know what you're entitled to. You are able to therefore calculate what you're getting in your hand and take a conscious call. So at a micro level, at an individual decision making level, I think it's not that complicated, and I think its timing is very good. Of course, design you can always have a clear, simpler design, but the timing is pretty good.
You know, Ritesh, give me a sense of whether this would be a game changer if private sector and private companies take the hint and actually extend it so a larger pool of people come into this scheme. It's doable actually, because it's not like you're paying additional money to employees. You're paying them what they would have got anyway, but they're not utilizing that amount because no one is traveling because of the pandemic or traveling less.
Sure.
So do you think private sector will bite the bait and want to give this incentive as well, and that will be the game changer?
I think, and that's where the economy today is very different from what it was when we started the liberalization process. There is a huge and varied public sector with uh, so for instance, in my organization, I've already enjoyed my LTA, so it's not waited for the month of October. Okay, in some other organizations, they may have scrapped it, given it in some other way. Uh, it may not be money which is lying around to be disbursed at this point in time. So to that extent, may not be a game changer. At the same time, uh, you know, economies operate on signals and expectations. Uh, the government saying it is time to re-engage in consumption and stimulate consumption rather than save the country from the virus, etc., is a positive signal, which read along with the falling numbers of cases on a daily basis, might just trigger a positive sentiment in the manufacturing sector. Uh, on the banking side, we're already seeing a lot of aggression from all
Yeah.
the bigger lenders. So I think there are other parties in the ecosystem who are also looking for a big bang this festive season, and this is potentially a force multiplier on that.
Well, we'll have to see if it's a force multiplier. Mr. Shukla, your take on, whether you need more and more companies to enlist this. And also one key question. We know we need to boost consumption in the economy. Is it for this section of people who are relatively well-to-do, who have not lost their jobs or have not really reduced their income and may have that income, but it's a very small base? Is it really going to make a difference?
See, I think this is something that the government would want the private sector to probably adapt or take it forward, which is a fair argument. And also, uh, talking about the base, I think this is something where the government has some sort of a fair degree of control, you can say. And like it was just mentioned, uh, if you put together central government and state government employees, you have some critical mass, and these are the people who can actually have some impact on spending. So I would say this is a good attempt, good beginning. The only thing is this needs to be simplified to have the desired impact. And having said all of this, I think, like I mentioned, it's very, very clear that the government alone cannot make up for the loss of private sector demand. And therefore, private sector companies chipping in, some bit of simplification of this scheme uh, could go a long way in boosting demand. And what you have seen, Tamanna, if you look at the first half of the fiscal, the government spending has been just 6% as compared to the budgeted figure of 12.7%. So what it will do to an extent is also boost the second half spending. I mean, there is some scope, but I think there is some bit of ironing out that needs to be done. It could definitely potentially boost consumption demand, and a part of this fiscal cost can be recovered by the way of GST on these purchases. And then these are time bound, these are temporary, not a burden on the exchequer for long. So I think all of these are good features. The only additional thing I would want is some bit of simplification so that it's not really tied into LTA. For example, there's a 4-year block, right? Most people would have probably used the LTA thing. So I think there are certain clarifications. I wouldn't want to bore you or people right now with some of these nitty-gritty or some of these details. But I would think that the government has applied its mind. I mean, just look at how they plugged out the 10,000 rupee festival advance, which was scrapped by the pay commission, and then they've brought it back as just one-time measure. So I think this shows that the government has begun to think on its feet, and they're trying to do what is required. But will this be a game changer? I don't think so. But it will definitely go some way in potentially boosting demand, especially consumption demand. And second half growth will get a leg up if this is designed and implemented properly.